I declare in advance that I have no debts or obligations whatsoever. Should it transpire that anyone is in my debt, then through this I declare the debt null and void. My assets lie in the Central Reichsbank. First, I divide everything equally between the Liszt Musicians Benevolent Fund in Hamburg and its sister body, the Czerny Foundation in Vienna. Second, from my estate, both organizations are to share in payments to the following for as long as those concerned shall live. A, to my sister, Elise Grund in Hamburg, 5,000 marks a year. B, the same amount to my stepmother, Caroline Brahms, or her son in Pinneberg. C, to my landlady, Celestine Truxa, a lump sum of 10,000 florins. In addition, all my furniture and pictures, apart from the medallion picture of Schumann with inscription. Third, my books and my music I bequeath to the Music Lovers Society in Vienna, including the manuscript of the Mozart G minor symphony, the 6 quartets by Haydn, the complete printed and written works of Scarlatti, and various manuscripts of Schubert and Beethoven. To Joseph Joachim, I bequeath the sketches of Schumann's 3-string quartets. Finally, I wish that my body be cremated, just as I wish that all handwritten, unpublished material also be burned. I have missed my chance. At the time, I really felt inclined to marry. I was unable to offer a woman the appropriate lifestyle. At the time when I should have liked to marry, my music was either hissed in the concert halls or at the very least received with icy coldness. For myself, I was able to bear that quite well because I knew its worth and that someday the tables would be turned. But if at such moments I'd been forced to confront a wife and confess another failure, I could not have borne that. And yet life has been good to me. I hardly need to say that I do not like to speak about myself. With the best will in the world, I cannot answer your individual questions except to say that I am a Lutheran and was born in Hamburg on the 7th of May, 1833. I received the title of doctor in Breslau. This title should have been previously bestowed on me in Cambridge. On such occasions, one is supposed to subject oneself in person to a formal celebration, but I preferred to be impolite, and therefore it never happened.
At 2:30 on the afternoon of the 6th of April, the funeral procession set off. The mourners followed behind the coffin, first of all the Directorate of the Music Lovers Society, then all the professors of the Conservatoire and members of the Singing Society and the Vienna Choral Society. Next came deputations from the Hamburg Senate, the Berlin Philharmonic, the Berlin Academy of Arts, the College of Music, the Amsterdam Music Society, the Budapest Conservatoire, the Philharmonic Societies of Laibach and Budapest, and the Leipzig Gewandhaus. Then came Marie Schumann, Adele Strauss, Eduard Strauss, Anton Dvorak, Fritz Simrock, Artur Nikisch, Ferruccio Busoni, and Eusebius Mandichevsky. Only old friend Joseph Joachim was unable to attend.
There is in every age an alliance of related minds. Those who belong to it should anchor it tight.
His introduction to the public was due to a chance encounter. Edward Remini, a Hungarian violinist who had left his country after the failed revolution of 1848 and who now led an itinerant life, took the 20-year-old Brahms with him as accompanist on an impromptu concert tour. In the company of Remini, Brahms visited a successful compatriot, the violinist Joseph Joachim, who was the royal concertmaster in Hanover. The association with Remini soon petered out, but from their first meeting, there originated a profound mutual affection between the young Brahms and Joachim, which would lead to a lifelong friendship.
Dusseldorf, 1st of October 1853. A phenomenon was brought to us this month in the shape of a 20-year-old composer from Hamburg, Brahms. Robert wrote to Joachim, "He is the one who is to come."
I felt certain someone would and must appear, fated to express the spirit of the times in the loftiest and most ideal manner.
What he played for us is so masterly. It brims with exuberant imagination and intensity of feeling, and is consummate in form.
Barely a fortnight after meeting Brahms for the first time, Robert Schumann wrote the famous article, Neue Bahnen, New Paths.
And he has come. His name is Johannes Brahms, from Hamburg, where he has been creating in obscure silence. He had been recommended to me by an esteemed and famous master. He carries all the marks of one who has received a call. Sitting at the piano, he began to reveal truly marvelous regions. We were drawn into ever-enchanting circles, and through his quite inspired playing at the piano, an orchestra seemed to grow.
Honored Master, you have made me so endlessly happy. Dearest friend, since spring of this year I've been living in Dusseldorf, and I will always remember it. Fare you well and think fondly of me. Your profoundly admiring servant, Johannes Brahms.
We did not think about Brahms much. He was just there. He simply belonged there.
Everything was in good order, but one thing we could not find, which pained me deeply: the wedding ring. I wish to explain this to you, my dear children, so there will never be any doubt as to what occurred. It was on the 26th of February, 1854, the day that I saw him for the last time in Dusseldorf, when he suddenly disappeared. In the grip of delirium, he threw himself into the River Rhine, but was fortunately rescued at once. Afterwards, I found papers which said, among other things, "Dear Clara, I cast my wedding ring into the Rhine. Do the same with yours, and then both our rings will become one."
In February 1854, a disaster took place which had a traumatic effect on Brahms and which would trouble his life for several years. Robert Schumann was found to be in a state of nervous collapse, which necessitated committing him to an institution in Endenich near Bonn, where he remained right up until his death.
My Clara, it is as if something dreadful were in store for me.
Dr. Richards writes to me that Robert is beyond all hope. Johannes visited him for a couple of hours.
It is extremely moving and pitiful. Schumann has lost a great deal of weight, and any hope of speaking with him is out of the question.
I have been here with Johannes since yesterday. Oh, Joachim, how painful it was to see him like that.
On Thursday evening they buried him. I carried forward the wreath, together with Joachim and Dietrich.
Within minutes, the Bonn marketplace was packed shoulder to shoulder. The beautifully situated graveyard was black with people.
Then came Johannes Brahms. Your father loved and honored him like no other, except Joachim. He came as a loyal friend to share my grief. He was my friend in the fullest sense of the word. He and Joachim were the only ones to see your dear father in his illness. It was Johannes alone who sustained me. Never forget this, my dear children.
I am painting a gentle portrait of you, which will eventually become an adagio. I bid you farewell, my dear, dear Clara. Your Johannes.
My dear Johannes, I found the parting so sad. Think fondly of me, always. Your loyal Clara.
My Clara, do not imagine for a moment that life has little more in store for you. That is simply not true. Passions must die, or they need to be hunted out.
Precisely what happened between Clara and Johannes will probably never be known. If Brahms now forcibly repressed all tempting dreams of a liaison with Clara, it was because the artist in him would not permit it. In life, as in work, a new period began.
I forced a sharp and hard steel nib to describe to you my concerto, which was a brilliant and decisive fiasco. In the evening, the first and second movements evoked absolutely no feelings in performers or listeners. At the end, 3 pairs of hands started slowly to clap, but a clear hissing from all sides forbade it.
One had to sit through it for over 3/4 of an hour. This rooting and rummaging, this straining and tugging, this tearing and patching of phrases and flourishes. And Brahms, what is more, deliberately made the pianoforte part as uninteresting as possible.
But the hissing was still too much of a good thing, wasn't it?
It was in the year 1858 when we were so close to one another.
His friend Grimm makes Brahms aware of the fact that an engagement is expected in Agatha's circle of friends, and that he has 2 options: to declare his love or never to see Agatha again.
I love you and must see you again, but I cannot carry fetters.
When I received Johannes's last letter, I had only one option: to forsake him. And this I did, though with heavy heart.
Hamburg, 5th of December, 1864. I was desperately sore of heart at your mother's. Everything so scattered about. What misery. Your mother and Elise constantly in tears, and then your father pouring out his heart to me. I tell you, I feel quite wretched by it.
A source of considerable sorrow for Brahms was a quarrel between his parents which resulted in their separation. The problem resolved itself tragically when his mother died the following February at the age of 75.
It is simple to explain that I find it hard, having lived for 34 years in the family, not always happily, it has to be said, to accustom myself to the life I have been leading for nearly 2 years now. You will then surely not hold it against me if I now inform you that I am thinking of marrying again. Your loving father.
Good Friday, performance of the Requiem. As well as this, Frau Joachim sang an aria from the Messiah, accompanied by her husband on the violin. It was wonderful, so beautiful, as I had never heard her sing before. A crowd of friends had come together, but curiously, Only Johannes' father had come from Hamburg. The Requiem has moved me like no other church music ever before. Watching Johannes standing there, baton in hand, I kept thinking of Robert's prophecy, which today was fulfilled. I have not felt so joyful in a long time.
When he holds his magic over the massed resources of chorus and orchestra, we shall be shown still more wonderful glimpses into the secrets of the spirit world.
Through his German Requiem, Brahms liberated himself from an intolerable pressure which had weighed on his whole existence. With the completion of this work, the composer achieved the pinnacle of his ability. The house in Lichtental, near Baden-Baden, lies open and yet hidden behind trees on a hill, a little way behind the Lichtenthaler Allee. Brahms lived there for the first time in the summer of 1865. Clara Schumann had earlier bought herself a house in the Lichtenthaler Allee. Up on the wooded mountains, Brahms indulged his passion for long, solitary morning walks, during which most of his works evolved.
I do not like hearing that I wrote the Requiem for my mother.
When, in February 1865, Brahms received the dispatch informing him of his mother's death and calling him from Vienna to Hamburg, I discovered him shortly before the journey at the piano. He was playing the Goldberg Variations by Bach, and with tears coursing down his cheeks, he said, "It is like balm."
I have arranged the text myself from the Bible.
The following year in Germany, the work in its complete form saw no fewer than 20 performances. This was followed by performances in Bâle and Zurich in 1869, Vienna and London in 1871, Utrecht and Petersburg in 1872, Brünn in 1874, and Paris and Rotterdam in 1875.
On Sunday, we announced Julie's engagement to our friends. Naturally, I told Johannes first of all. It appears he had no inkling and was quite shocked. Johannes is a changed man at the moment. He rarely visits and is uncommunicative even towards Julie. Did he really love her?
Marie and I sat one evening in an unhappy frame of mind. The bell rang and we heard Brahms go across to our mother, and soon grave, deeply moving sounds rang out. We listened, and then we heard Brahms leave, and Mother came straight over to us in a state of great excitement. Brahms had played the Rhapsody to her.
Baden-Baden, 28th of August, 1869. Dear Herr Simrock, I have written a bridal song for the Countess Schumann, but I write such a thing with ire, with anger. What can come of it?
A couple of days ago, Levi informed me that Johannes is quite infatuated with Julie.
In 1869, Julie Schumann, the third child of Clara and Robert Schumann, married the Italian Count Vittorio Radicati di Marmorito.
I can only feel this piece as an expression of his soul's pain. If he would only use words so intimately.
December 1871. Dear Father, next year I am supposed to become Kapellmeister here. The Music Lovers Society has now offered me its directorship for the 3rd time, and now that my earlier misgivings have lifted, I have accepted the post. I have now finally found an apartment which suits me, quite near to the Karlskirche. My address is Vienna 4th District, Karlsgasse, number 4. Have a joyful celebration and think lovingly of me. Your Johannes.
The rooms were extremely quiet and had an extraordinarily beautiful view of the columns of the huge Karlskirche, which Brahms particularly loved.
You seem to feel so ill at ease with us, day by day, week by week, so disgruntled, that it really did become a sad time for us too.
I am at a loss for words, dear Clara. You write of my mood in Baden. I wanted to reply to your letter, which admittedly says some harsh things, as innocently as possible, but I am unable to do so. I express myself through music. Only such a weak musician as myself would gladly cling to the belief that he is better than his music.
How alien your notion of concert tours seemed to me. You regard it purely as a means of income, whereas I feel it my duty to recreate beautiful works.
There is so much truth in your letter. In fact, I must sadly confess that all of it is true. My father is only 66. It seems as if I am about to lose him very soon. His death really would be premature, as his whole life has been hard, one of constant trouble and bother. Dear Mother, your picture hangs above my writing desk, and often when I look at it, I forget what I was thinking of. In death, Father looked so friendly, as he did so rarely in life, only in the most agreeable of moments.
Vienna set the tone in all aspects of music, and its atmosphere, which seemed permeated by music, enriched and broadened his artistic personality. Indeed, some of his creations could never have originated on any other breeding ground. The reserved Hamburger was enchanted by the intellectual atmosphere of the city on the Danube, the unforced conviviality of the Viennese families, and the free, cheerful atmosphere that prevailed, not least the natural musicality of most of his friends, which often led to the most wonderful impromptu house concerts. In the latter half of the 1870s began Brahms's period of great concert tours. They were distinguished from the earlier tours, some of which he had undertaken with Joachim, in that Brahms seldom performed works by other composers.
Dearest Clara, permit this profound love to also be a source of comfort to you. I love you more than myself, or any other person or thing on this earth. Dear Simrock, this is the tiresome financial relationship that is still customary between musicians and publishers. We musicians are treated like children and minors in that respect. We have not the slightest idea what will be paid or how, whether we are giving or receiving, or whether we are robbing or being robbed. With respect to you, I fear doing you an injustice. I've no idea whether you are running risks, whether you're counting on the future, and could therefore be very much mistaken. You must see that this situation does not make for an easy relationship.
It really is about time that you sent some manuscripts soon. The Hungarian Dancers, a second piano concerto, and a violin concerto at last.
Fritz Simrock became Brahms's closest confidant and financial advisor. He was also the administrator of his estate.
So now for the piano concerto. I hope that you find it easily digestible. As for the matter of a fee for the concerto, I was thinking of 9,000 marks, the same as for the violin concerto. But honestly, this matter of money could never really be an issue. The worst is, I have grown a full beard. Prepare your wife for the most dreadful sight. I feel quite wretched at the thought that whilst you're in the area, I merely stand mutely on the sidelines. This is where only a concert could assist us, one which we could perform either here in Pest or else in Prague.
Although Joachim was only 2 years older than Brahms, he already possessed a rich and varied musical experience which he had acquired in his youth, starting as a child prodigy.
The trips with Frau Joachim are at an end. She is accompanying her husband to Königsberg and Danzig. From there, he is traveling on further to Petersburg while she returns to Berlin. She was always an extremely pleasant companion, sang beautifully, and was always in a good mood, always unassuming.
Joachim became Brahms's critical advisor, someone he could trust unconditionally. All of his scores passed through Joachim's hands, and most of his chamber music works received their first performances by Joachim. Brahms sealed this bond by dedicating his violin concerto to him, to which Joachim, for his part, added a cadenza.
We live here now in the age of the phonograph. I was thinking to myself how happy Edison must have been after finding this wonderful seedling.
In 1891, when I was 18 years old, I was with my family in Ischel. Brahms came to Ischel already in May. At that time, it was very quiet. The real season beginning only in July, when the Emperor Franz Joseph was there. One afternoon, Brahms paid me a visit. It was a great moment for me, and I felt very happy. In 1893, one day after dinner, Brahms said, "Oh, I want to play you, well, a few exercises which I have just composed." And then began to play all the Klavierstücke opus 118 and 119. He played with heart and soul, forgetting everything around him. His playing was grand and noble. It was, of course, the most wonderful thing for me to hear these pieces, as nobody yet knew anything about them. A few months after, in London, I gave them their first public performance. Of course, I wrote to Frau Schumann about the Klavierstücke at once.
A letter from Ilona Eibenschutz, who is sending me many reviews. The English have a great respect for Brahms.
When I returned the score of his E minor symphony to him in 1885, of which no other copy existed, he bound the precious manuscript with thread, as was his custom, in order to present it unwrapped to Joachim. Horrified by this, I begged him to at least send it by registered post, to which he replied, "That really isn't necessary. Things like this don't simply disappear." But what if it did? Well, then I would just have to rewrite the score. In the mornings, everyone was admitted free of charge. An iron bell pull set a thundering bell in motion. The thin tin box was for letters and visiting cards. There was no inscription, no nameplate indicating who lived there.
Dear Clara, it troubles me that you have financial problems whilst I'm rolling in it without realizing or gaining any pleasure from it. I can and wish to live no differently, and where my heart demands it, I can help and do good in every measure without noticing it.
He rose at 6 o'clock in the morning and drank coffee all morning long, which he prepared himself on the machine, whilst writing music at the high desk in the library. This was his way of life when in the city. He would receive his visitors here, sitting opposite them in the cane chair.
Dearest Johannes, on reading your letter, I was deeply moved. Words sound hollow in comparison with what one feels in such a moment. So let me confess to you that your offer of support comforted my heart in a way I have not felt for a long while. However, I must refuse your generous offer at the moment. Since I consider you to be such a decent person, which you are, and because I am so very fond of you, as you wish, I make a pledge to you that I will turn to you at once should the troubles become really serious. Your old, loyal Clara.
Dear Clara, please do not be angry. You returned my intended consignment in such a friendly manner in the summer that I am risking it once again. So please accept it if tomorrow you find 15,000 marks lying humbly at your feet.
I cannot rest without having told you, my dear old friend, what a wonderfully happy hour you gave me today. And when I think of the hours when I was happiest in life, you always occupy pride of place. I have shared in a significant part of your development, as you have in mine. It is like a bond that embraces siblings. I have often mused on the nature of human happiness. Well, today, listening to your music, I was happy. Your Theodore Bilroth.
After Brahms's performances, Bilroth loved to continue celebrating by entertaining friends to a meal at his home. He was an accomplished musician who, in his capacity as pianist, as well as violinist and violist, adored domestic chamber music above all else. Brahms valued his friends' extraordinary receptivity and sublime musicality. Eduard Hanslick was regarded as the most respected critic in Vienna.
I can safely say that in my long life, I have met only very few people who, in the course of the long years, have remained as loyal, honest, intelligent, and decent as our dear Hanslick. After all, I am dependent on the outside world, the hurly-burly in which we live. I do not add my laughter to its medley of voices, nor do I join its chorus of lies. I had recently begun various projects, symphonies and other things, but nothing would come right. Then I thought I was already too old, and I made up my mind to stop writing altogether. I was reflecting on how all my life I had worked diligently, had achieved enough, and had reached a carefree age, and how I could now sit back and enjoy it. And this made me so happy, so contented, that things started to work again.
Brahms leaned against the wall of a house as if to observe the Karlskirche. Moved by the sight of it, he pointed towards it and exclaimed, "Just look at it. The church is so beautiful. And behind it, there once stood an inn to the golden moonlight, where Schubert drank and sang."
To Herr Eduard Hanslick, dearest friend, just as I was penning the title to some waltzes for four hands, which should be appearing sometime soon, your name flew into my head. I don't know, I was thinking of Vienna and of the beautiful girls you played duets with. I was thinking of you, a keen lover of such things and a fine friend, and I thought of all manner of things.
You know well what I think of Johannes. After Bach and Beethoven, he is the greatest and most sublime of all composers.
Your most humble servant, Johannes Brahms, is delighted to be permitted to come and to be able to do so.
Brahms was a regular guest at the splendid villa of Johann Strauss, the Waltz King, in Ischl. And Strauss never stopped inviting him to his social gatherings, although from time to time, the ironic friend painfully embarrassed his host by openly declaring a strong aversion to any guest he did not like.
Johannes Brahms, tomorrow your merriest and proudest listener.
When stepdaughter Alice Strauss requested an autograph, Brahms wrote the opening bars of the famous Strauss waltz, To the Blue Danube, and added the words, "Unfortunately not by Johannes Brahms." The bourgeois eating house, the Red Hedgehog, had always been a favorite meeting place for musicians. Beethoven is supposed to have often sat in the back room of the ground floor tavern. The distinguished guests were served on the first floor. Brahms had his regular seat in the tavern. Whenever he was not invited elsewhere or was away from Vienna, he would dine there, regularly at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
That which you call invention, that is to say a thought, an idea, is simply an inspiration from above for which I am not responsible, which is no merit of mine. It is a present which I ought to despise until I have made it my own by right of hard work. There need be no hurry about that either. It is as with the seed corn. It germinates unconsciously and in spite of ourselves. When I have found the first phrase of a song, I might put the book there and then go for a walk, do some other work, and perhaps not think of it again for months. Nothing, however, is lost. If afterwards I approach the subject again, it is sure to have taken shape. I can now begin to really work at it. Vienna, 13th of September, 92. Dear Clara, with regards to friends, I am aware of only one shortcoming, clumsiness when dealing with others. On this subject, you have exercised a long and considerable forbearance. I am accustomed to solitude, and should be used to the thought of this great void. But you will allow me to repeat to you today that you and your husband constitute the most beautiful experience of my life and represent all that is richest and most noble in it. I feel that through my manner and nothing else, I may have warranted the great pain of your turning away from me. But the loving and adoring thought of you and him will always glow warmly and brightly. In deep devotion, Johannes Brahms.
Frankfurt am Main, 27th of September, 1892. Your letter has upset me greatly. You are, of course, correct in saying that personal intercourse with you is often difficult. And yet my friendship for you has always helped to rise above your vagaries. So let us, dear Johannes, be on more friendly terms again. As ever, your loyal Clara.
Easter Monday, 18th of April, 1892. On a walk on the Ring in Vienna, Brahms and the mezzo-soprano Alice Barby smile at an amateur photographer. The house in the background is the Hotel Imperial. Brahms was smitten with the exquisite Italian who sang his songs so beautifully, and he accompanied one of her concerts, much to the surprise of the Vienna public, ex-tempore.
I have come a long way. I am respected by my friends and by my rivals. Even if they do not love me, they respect me, and that is the important thing. I do not ask for more. Bilrath had all the necessary qualities to become popular, but I wish you could see as I can what it is to be loved here in Vienna. At home we are strangers to this and are unable to do so. We do not bare our hearts so unreservedly, nor is love so warmly and beautifully revealed as it is here. His conjugal experiences have made him unhappy, but also his relationship with Liszt. Bülow once said to me, I always have to keep as busy and excited as possible so as to keep my mind off things, for I have lived through such hard times that the very thought of them could kill me. Apart from Frau Schumann, I am attached to no one with all my heart. It really is terrible, and one should neither think nor speak of it. Is this life then to be so alone? We do not truly believe in immortality beyond this life? The only true immortality lies with children.
On the Sundays when there were no concerts, we would go for walks. One of the coffee houses near to the Court Opera usually served as a meeting place. We would reach the countryside by horse-drawn tram and train. Brahms always insisted on travelling third class, not just in the spring and autumn, but in the winter too. He always ran on up ahead, his face flushed, his eyes sparkling.
Have I never spoken to you of my beautiful principles? Among them are no further attempts at opera or marriage.
Ein kleiner, hübscher Vogel nahm den Flug zum Garten hin, da gab es Obst. Welch ein hübscher, kleiner Vogel wär, ich sagte nicht, ich täte so wie er. Ein roten Artist lauert an dem Ort, der arme Vogel kommt er nicht mehr fort. Der rote Artist lauert an dem Ort,
I often visited Brahms during his summer breaks. There was never a small child that did not run up to the stout man with the white beard and friendly blue eyes, or wave to him from afar.
You remember how in the past I failed in the very same Leipzig with the very same D minor concerto. Then they booed me down, just as now they applaud me.
The composer conducted himself, with Eugen Dalberg at the piano, whose artistry Brahms held in the highest esteem.
The cemetery in Bonn. We all entered the chapel. In front of it stood a crowd of musicians, among them Brahms. He had come straight from Ischl. As I passed by him, he offered his hand to me in tears. At the grave, I saw Brahms throw in 3 handfuls of earth.
Brahms recounted Schumann's last time in Endenich and how it had all been distorted in the press. In the very beginning, Schumann was still able to wander around freely and even accompanied Brahms to the station, with an attendant following discreetly behind.
I've spent a few days in the Siebengebirge, where a large number of very good friends usually gathered for Whitsun. I felt less inclined to join them than usual.
In 1896, his great friend and biographer Max Kalbeck and his wife came from Attersee to Ischl for a day to pay Brahms a visit. They asked Brahms and me to dine with them in the Hotel Post. After dinner, Brahms and I accompanied them one station in the Salzburger Bahn and walked back to Ischl. None of us dreamt that this was the last happy time we should be together.
Professor Schrotter, whom I met in Vienna on the 9th of September, kept saying, "Poor fellow, poor fellow." When I told him that Brahms should have gone to the spa in Karlsbad, he replied, "There is no Karlsbad for Brahms's illness. It really does not matter where he spends his money."
Yes, my dear fellow, I suffer from a slight commonplace jaundice.
In spite of his protests, he was sent by one or other doctor to Karlsbad, and on the 31st of August, he journeyed from Ischl to Vienna, and then from there by overnight train to Karlsbad on the 3rd of September.
I suppose they are to do with Clara. I have not composed them for the occasion of her death, but have again been pondering a great deal over the subject of death.
My dear esteemed master, for some time I have felt the urge to write to you to express how deeply distressed my wife and I were to hear of your illness. We send our best wishes in the hope of being able to spend happy days with you again. Your admiring, grateful and loyal servant, Eugen d'Albert.
On the 8th of February, my wife heard from Frau Konrad the news that Brahms has cancer of the pancreas. She had known this from the doctors for a long time. "7th of March, Brahms E minor Symphony." Brahms was at the concert in the director's box. His presence there did not go unnoticed. As his dark head appeared like a spirit, the orchestra rose from their seats to greet him. The audience and musicians, beside themselves with sorrow and enthusiasm, all gave vent to their conflicting emotions.
Vienna, 24th of March, 1897. Dear Joachim, I am feeling increasingly worse. Every word, spoken or written, is a sacrifice for me. Since we last saw each other here, I have not ventured out in the evening. In fact, I have hardly taken one step. My warm-hearted greetings to everyone, from your Johannes Brahms.
As we entered the isolated grove in the cemetery, with the memorials to Mozart, Beethoven and Schubert, Brahms said that lying somewhere nearby